A warm hello to all the listeners. The topic for today's discussion is the power of traditional media in the digital age. By traditional media, we refer to newspapers, broadcast television, radio, which are different mediums of mass communication that have existed before the internet. Up until recently, before smartphones and internet data packs became an integral part of our everyday lives, we relied on the newspapers to learn about job vacancies. Every cricket match had to be watched live on television, and to make special appeals for songs, we had to SMS or dial up the radio station. For young listeners, these instances may sound like things of the past since they receive their information diet largely from the internet. Who needs traditional media today when almost everything under the sun is available on social media platforms and streaming services? The question we ask is, has traditional media gone obsolete in the digital age, or does it still hold any relevance in the current times? The answer would surprise many listeners. But the truth is that traditional media remains tenacious and maintains a strong hold despite an accelerating reach of social and digital native media. First of all, traditional media bypasses what is called the digital divide. By digital divide, we refer to the divide or the gap between those who have an easy access to technology, that is smartphones, computer, internet, and those who don't. For example, in the rural or remote regions of developing countries, basic infrastructure like cell towers or broadband cables may not be available, or women in a given household may not keep their personal cell phones due to social or economic reasons. Therefore, accessing news or any other information through the internet is not an option for them. However, traditional mediums of communication like TV or radio reach populations without internet access or smartphones. Radio or TV is jointly listened to or watched by multiple members of the family simultaneously. A lot of their programs are delivered in local languages, whereas even today, most content on the internet is largely posted in English. Traditional media, in this manner, clearly trumps over newer forms of media due to its wider demographic reach and accessibility. Talking of the digital divide, let us not forget that sometimes, even with access to digital technology, people have differing levels of digital literacy. Digital literacy refers to the ability to find, use, create, and communicate information effectively using digital technologies. It is not just knowing how to use a mobile or a computer. It is also about navigating apps and social media platforms to find relevant information online and be able to evaluate the source credibility. Older adults or people from the economically weaker sections of society, since they had less exposure to digital technologies while growing up, may not feel comfortable with new platforms and interfaces. As a result, they are also more vulnerable to online scams. In this context, traditional media is often the more reliable option since the most powerful currency of traditional media is its credibility built over time. When we read about an event in the newspaper or listen to the news on the radio or a TV news channel, we know that before communicating the news to the public, a meticulous process of fact-checking must have taken place. Moreover, if ever an erroneous communication is made by the traditional media outlets, there exist proper correction policies and legal accountability for any misinformation. On the other hand, the news published on social media does not necessarily follow a fact check, since most people on social media prioritize speed over verification. Their ultimate aim is to go viral. This is especially concerning in today's era when fake news is gaining momentum. Fake news refers to false or misleading information presented as legitimate news, deliberately created and spread to deceive for political, financial, or attention-seeking purposes. It is different from honest journalistic error because the content of fake news is often fabricated or manipulated to mislead the public. These days, fake news can be supplemented with deep fakes to arouse unrest in society. Deep fakes are AI-generated or AI-manipulated videos or audio to create false evidence. Just a few months ago, social media posts on missing children from a metro city of India had gone viral. It created such a public panic that the law and order authorities had to step in to clarify the situation, and the police had to take action against those publishing or forwarding such messages. These examples of misinformation are rare in traditional media, and if ever published, they do not get amplified in the same manner as happens on the internet-based platforms. Another important feature of traditional media is that it is curated as a whole and not built for individual preference. To understand it better, think of a newspaper and its different segments. There is front page news, business, sports, editorial, arts, local news, weather, all bundled together in the same newspaper. You're exposed to information that you were not necessarily looking for. To reach the sports section of a newspaper, you flip through the headlines on politics, business, and culture. So even with no interest in politics, you still absorb at least some information about what is happening in the political landscape of your country. In the social media, the information caters to individual taste and is pretty much self-selected. People optimize their own feeds for what already interests them. Their algorithm is trained on prior clicks, watch time, and engagement patterns. You're therefore bound to see more and more of the content that you like or that flatters your existing worldview. It reinforces your existing belief system and makes contradicting information less visible. Needless to say, this has important implications. Let us understand this with the help of an example. Imagine the Supreme Court of India announces a contentious ruling. The traditional media say a newspaper will provide details on the ruling, reactions from both sides, and a legal analysis. A subscriber who leans left and one who leans right open the identical physical or digital front page. The editorial judgment about what's important is applied uniformly. The reader's political leanings don't change the product. However, on a personalized feed, two people with different political leanings scrolling the same platform will likely see almost entirely different content. If someone has a history of engaging with content critical of the ruling, the feed surfaces more of that because the system's objective is to maximize engagement. The reader will likely not perceive this as bias from the inside, since everything in his or her feed feels reasonable and well supported. He or she just cannot see what is being filtered out. Eventually, as the biased catering accumulates, it can create an ideologically distorted worldview for the reader or the viewer. Students of social sciences must know of the very famous book Imagined Communities by Benedict Anderson. The central argument of this book is that nations are imagined political communities because members of a nation will never know most other members. However, all these members are bound by a sense of nationalism. Now, Anderson attributes this nationalism to several factors, but one important factor worth mentioning for our discussion is the role of print media in sustaining imagined communities. Benedict Anderson highlights how in the modern era, reading the newspaper became a mass ritual. Millions of strangers performing the same act at roughly the same time, consuming the same content, each aware that countless others were doing likewise. Print media, therefore, was responsible for the creation of a collective identity and a shared experience among people who would never meet. Broadcast media, that is radio and television, extended the same imagined community logic. Simultaneous national broadcasts like President's Address, sporting events reinforce collective identity, unlike social media, which is extremely personalized. So to put it in a nutshell, traditional media, due to its comprehensiveness, impersonal nature, wider reach and accessibility, creates shared reference points for public discourse compared to digital media's tendency to fragment audiences into echo chambers. And that is the power of traditional media in the digital age. Thank you.